on this week's podcast, I'm absolutely honoured to have this guy I've been following for a very long time. That's Andrew Tracey, who's not only on the front cover of the Men's Health magazine, which was the first time I saw this guy, he's also a fitness editor. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And you're making me blush a bit there with the intro.
Yeah, I mean, I said I've been waiting for this for a very long time. So I really appreciate your time today. And I think a good place to start would be maybe go back to when you very first started. What got you into fitness?
To be honest, I tell this story loads, so I'll try and keep it as short as I can. But I didn't play any team sports growing up. I was not interested in sport at all. I was fairly athletic through doing kind of non-organized sports. I would skate, I would BMX, I would do all that kind of stuff. All stuff that teenagers that grow up on council estates do, run away from security guards and all that stuff. So I was athletic. I had toe rag fitness, I call it, but I wasn't interested in sports whatsoever. And when I was 16, I took a job in a gym, and I had no interest in the gym whatsoever. It was just a job that came up front of house, or behind the counter, whatever you'd call it. And I took it for beer money, as you do at 16. Yeah. Like, it was just something to do, which is ironic now when I look at. It's funny to look back retroactively at what my life is now built around this industry. And I was just like, I just need money for a tins at a weekend. So I took this job in the gym, and it was a real. And no disrespect, it was a real spit and sawdust like bodybuilding gym. We're going back to like 2006 now, so it's long. It was a while. It was a long time ago, and it was the best place I could have possibly started because it wasn't a particularly big gym. It was pretty hardcore. In the evenings, in the mornings, it just had people's mums and nans came in and sort of did their incline walk and loved them. But in the evenings, it was kind of all of the, how can I put it, like all of the faces in the town I grew up in. So it was all of the doormen, and it was like, it's just all these just, as you can imagine, just all these huge tattooed like guys. And I was like 16. I'm naturally such a small built guy as well. So I was like 16 years old, weighed like, I'd probably 50 kilos with rocks in my pockets.
I think it must have been the same as me with that one, yeah.
And I was just in this environment that could have been so intimidating, but I found out these guys in this setting, and bear in mind I'm 16 as well, so I'm at that age where I'm starting to like go out of an evening and like try and get to nightclubs and stuff. So I kind of knew these guys from around, and they were like scary dudes to me. Yeah. And then being in this setting with them, in this fitness setting, and this is something I think about all the time now, and it's carried through my entire like career. They were completely different. These were the nicest people in the world. They just wanted to help you to enjoy the thing that they enjoyed, being fitness. So I was like this tiny kid training with these, like, they'd be like, oh, do you want to jump in on a session? And that, we're talking, these guys are like bench pressing 180 kgs. And every time I've got to do a set, we've got to take 6 plates off just for me to do my like 3 reps. But yeah, it was an amazing kind of baptism into the industry. And I was like, wow, I love this. Not played team sports, perhaps being in this environment was the first time I'd really felt that feeling of like camaraderie. So yeah, I'm in there all day. I'm in there like 10, 12 hours a day. So I just started reading everything I could. There was a ton of material in the gym, books, reference books, textbooks. I started to take the very first online courses as they were coming up, and I went and qualified. I went away, got my PT cert very young, started coaching when I was kind of like 17, 18, and the rest is history, really. I mean, that was it. I mean, I was always obsessed with wanting to be really good at this thing and wanting to understand how everything works. So I would offer anyone that came from the door, if I knew, I'd chat to everyone, but if I knew these guys were just kind of going through the motions, I would be like, hey, look, I've seen this thing, or I'm studying this like concept. Do you want me to do some programming for you? So I had this like great depth of work, like starting to rise, where people were like, yeah, sure, like put me something together. And then I would just observe how these people would react to these different things, which was great. And I recommend anyone to do that. Any PT starting out, when you start out, you might only have 3, 4, 5 clients. It's not a huge body of work, especially if you're only seeing them once, twice a week. So I would say go away and offer in any capacity you can to get as much feedback as possible from other people beyond just your clients. And that will help you build that confidence experience and learn what is and isn't working. From there, I lived in a town just outside of London, and quite a normal, I guess, like career trajectory would be for people there would be, I'm going to go get a job in town. So I went out, I started working in the city. I did that for a while in big commercial gyms. And it really just did sap the life out of it for me. It would be very different now. I'm a very different person, but I was very young. I was very petulant, and I really didn't like this corporate environment. And it's absolutely sapped the life out for me. And the thing that was the death knell really was that previously I'd been obsessed with continuing my learning, continuing my training, honing my craft. And now I'm in this place where everything is, it's the capital city. I could swing a cat and I could hit a seminar where someone was coming to talk. Yeah. And in the beginning, I was like, this is amazing. But then it was burning me out so much. I didn't want to do this stuff. I didn't want to go and take advantage of this stuff. And, even the gyms I was working in had great extracurricular training programs that they would encourage you to do, which initially I'd be picking people's brains all the time. I would go to every sort of, educational thing I could. And by the time I didn't want to do it, I was like, I need to decide whether working in this setting and, earning the money or whatever it is you think that you want is worth losing my love for fitness. And I had some stuff going on in my personal life as well. And it was all just kind of a big, how can I put it? I had a bit of a crisis, to be honest, if I'm completely authentic, like I'm being completely sort of transparent about it. I had a big crisis, and I was like, I'm going to go and do something else for a little while and just rejig kind of how I'm feeling. I kept in touch with some of my clients, and I was still doing remote programming for them. And I went to work in the events industry. My dad had worked there previously as rigger. And he was like, just go and do some work in the events industry. You'll travel the country. It'll give you a chance to clear your head.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was supposed to be like 6 months. I thought I'll go do a summer of that. I'll keep doing my remote programming to keep my toe in. I'll start going back to seminars, blah, 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 blah. This was like 2011, I want to say.
Yeah. It's 10 years ago.
Then, yeah. And I'm still in the events industry. It was supposed to be 6 months. But yeah, the Olympics came up. And I'd worked myself with the company I was in. I'd worked myself into a reasonably good role, and the Olympics came up. So I had some good management positions there, and it was super exciting. And for me, it kind of coalesced, and it was on that nice Venn diagram between what I was doing at the time, but still being involved in sports. And it's funny, obviously 2021 Tokyo is on now, and I was watching some of the stuff, and I was actually getting quite nostalgic. Just last night, I was watching skateboarding. And I was thinking how privileged I was to have been in London for that whole thing. Like I was, for the duration of the Olympics, I stayed more or less on site. Yes. So I got to stay in the athletes' village, and it was incredible. So I'm so glad as a non-athlete, that's like something we're never going to experience. So that was super cool. But anyway, back to training. I had really stopped training because I was working, in events. You're traveling everywhere. You're staying in like the cheapest hotels the office can find. You don't have cooking facilities. You're living on like pot noodles and hot dogs. Yeah. And I was like, well, I guess I don't work out now. The job's super physical anyway, so you're always going to tick those boxes of, physiological kind of well-being. Yeah. But I'd lost a ton of weight. I looked at okay, I guess. And I think one day, I don't think there was really an epiphany, but I think one day I was like, I need to start training again. I've got to do something. And initially, the first little bit was at the Olympics. I was a manager on the Riverbank Arena. That was the hockey stadium. And I had like a container in there, and I had like a hammock that I made hanging up, because I'd be there for like 24 hours sometimes. So I'd just grab a little nap there. And then I made like a punch bag, and I just brought in some odd objects like sandbags and stuff. And I started just training in this container, which felt good. It felt really good to get back into it. And then that all finished, and I went back out on the road. And that was when, and at this point, by the way, I'm still doing some remote programming. Yes. I've got back into going to ongoing like further education and kind of spending time immersed with coaches and stuff. So
I almost started getting your mojo back at this point, and you're slowly coming back through.
Yeah, exactly that. And then I was kind of like, well, I was thinking about all the people particularly the men of our kind of age who are in a similar position. They travel for work or they work a really manual job and they kind of think like, oh, I can't work out.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was really privileged to have the experience I had in fitness and the education I had in fitness, and that I should be using that instead of just being one of those guys going, oh yeah, you don't need, you can't do that after a day of graft. I needed to actually do something about it. So I started, literally just training in hotel car parks. It's funny, like accruing a little bit of kit bit by bit. And I'm a sucker for a story.
Yeah.
So like every bit of kit I had like a weird little, like my first set of gymnastics rings, don't tell anyone this, a school closed down, like just up the road from where I lived, it closed down. And then someone, I don't even know how it came up, someone randomly just said to me, oh, do you know the door to the sports hall in that school? It's just wide open. I was like, oh, is it? And I literally, funnily enough, it's the school that my daughter's going to now. They've torn it down and rebuilt it. But anyway, so I went for a run one night and I ran in and I was like, oh yeah, the door's open. And I literally climbed the rope and took these gymnastics rings. And I still got them to this day. That was like my first set of rings. So I'm like, right, they're coming with me. And then, I bought a rope off some guy. And we were doing some work on a showground and there was like an auto jumble there. And there was this guy called Chippy. He's Chippy or Chappy, I can't remember, but he looked like a pirate. When someone's just so brown? When someone's so brown that they've never seen the shade in their life?
Yeah.
And he had no top on. He had these cut-on denim shorts, and I bought this big length of. Anyway, I love a story about a bit of kit. Me, so I was just buying bits and bats, and I was training in these car parks, and I was like, right, can I backwards engineer these principles, like these methods that I know that work? Yes. So whether it's can I do German volume training with just body weight, some rings, and a kettlebell? And can I put some timber back on? Cool. Can I get to a decent body composition training like this? Cool. Can I get my fitness level up quite high? Cool. And I started kind of documenting it on Instagram, and people seem to be interested. I think because I was providing an alternative, an alternative route for people that didn't. And this is kind of like my website is literally called You Are Not Your Gym Membership. Yeah. And the idea is that I think people can get so swept up in, and this is more that this is bigger than the gym. This is just everything. And it's kind of that idea that things, well, it's literally a line kind of paraphrase from Fight Club. Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club. The things you own end up owning you, because if you would, like, as we spoke before you press record, and people get so used to the fact that, well, the gym is where I go and do my fitness. Then when they can't get to the gym, they're like, well, I guess I'm not doing fitness anymore. And I think I was maybe just presenting this alternative viewpoint, but I was doing it like the really extreme end of the spectrum where I literally had nothing. I was in like service station car parks in Wakefield at 9 o'clock at night, dragging my van through like the lorry park and doing kettlebell swings and pull-ups, which I guess I was fortunate in the fact that not as horrible as it was, I loved it, but as like weird as it was, I guess it does look quite cool. People are like, oh, what the fuck is this guy doing?
It's kind of like two ends, isn't it? It's like it'd be one group going, I'll never do that, and another group going, what's this kid doing? I want to be doing this,
That's kind of what, it was never deliberate, because I find it very cheesy when people say things like, oh, I set out to inspire, because I just think, just be yourself. And people will be attracted to what they like. But I guess my thing was, and I'm not one of these guys, I'm not one of these coaches that's like, oh, no excuses, because I've just, I'm not wired like that. But I guess what I tried to do was set a precedent for, look, if I can be, it's pissing it down with rain, I'm in Huddersfield around the back of this like service station fire exit, trying to learn muscle ups. Like, you can do some burpees in your living room. Surely. I guess that was it. And then I resat some certifications just so I could get insurance in case I wanted to go back into coaching, because I was kind of up and down. But by this point, I'd started my own business and events as well.
What year would this have been? Now I'm asking the question here.
Or we might, I don't know. I think I've just covered like 3 or 4 years at this point. So maybe 2014 at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking it might be around now. If you were starting to do the Instagram posts.
Sounds
about that. Yeah.
And then I think another fitness magazine sort of contacted me, and they're like, "Oh, we want to share your workouts, and we want to share what you're doing." So I won't name it, but it's the other big one. And I went on the cover of that, and I had like a double page spread in that every month, just sharing these workouts you could do anywhere if you wanted to. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, I carried on running a business and events, but then I was very much then back in fitness and kind of treading both, doing a lot of writing, doing a lot of programming. My brothers worked for me. It was kind of a family business and event, so it wasn't something I could kind of just walk away from.
Yeah.
And then eventually I started doing events and things like that. And then I was offered I was a contributor for Men's Health for many years, just like, you know, contributing stuff. And they offered me the position as the fitness editor. I guess, as without trying to think too deep into it, I guess as kind of maybe someone who's got a little bit of a different perspective,
Yeah,
and has taken. This is again something I would advise if you're in a position to do this as a coach. If you've come straight out of college or school, whatever it is, and you've gone into personal training, it really is worth, as almost as like an apprenticeship, almost as like a bit of an experience. Go and get a job, like another job outside where you're not in the gym. You know, maybe it's something physical, or maybe it's just, you know, it's something where it's intense and it's all day and it takes a lot of thinking. And then see what you think about training.
Yeah,
and then
I think that's a great experience. I totally agree with that. Yeah,
it completely reframes how you empathize with your clients.
Yeah,
because it's really easy in this industry to be completely consumed by it. And it's hard then to remember that it's not the be all and end all for some people. For some people, it's simply a means to an end. And I always say to people, it's like cars. If you absolutely love cars, you're going to think about what car you buy. You're going to be like, oh, I need to make sure it's this. I need to make sure I get the 2 liter, and it's, you know, I need this trim and blah, 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 blah. It's got to be the 16 valve. Some people just want to drive to work in the morning, and they're just like, just give me a car that's not going to break down.
That's a great point, actually. Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same with fitness. Like some people, I see some PTs, and they've got this real hardcore message of like, you've got to put in the work. You need to take some responsibility for yourself. Cool. That's, 100% true. Big believer in personal responsibility. But maybe you as a trainer should meet them where they are and understand that it's not, they don't want to go overnight and turn into you. They want, some people perhaps may have goals that are beyond what their willingness to commit is. I think that's true for a lot of people. Like if you ask most guys, like just straight away, like, oh, what do you want to look like? I would say a good 80% of people would name someone or describe a physique that is perhaps beyond the level of commitment they're willing to put in. But you can help someone find the best version that they're going to get to with their level of commitment and a way to do it. I think that's the trick. And I think if you've always just been in fitness, maybe you don't realize that not everyone is as into it as you are.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I when I relate, I went into so many different jobs before I got into fitness, and that made me be able to relate to so many different people and be able to adapt the programs around what I think is realistic for what they want, of course, but also what they're realistically going to do. Because it's almost like, for example, our hierarchy of what we see fitness might be quite high up there, but for someone else who just does a standard 9-to-5 job, maybe an office job where fitness isn't a passion of theirs, they know they need to do it. But in terms of a hierarchy of where that falls, it might be quite far down the list. So if you get that up a little bit and they're able to get that health and fitness result, what they need, I would say, then that's going to be the job, isn't it? That's you doing your job in that sense. Yeah,
100%. It's like, I think with PTs, with trainers or coaches, whatever it is, that have that attitude, a conversation I have quite a lot with them is just reframe it to something else. And just show them the mirror. And one I find really easy is like, why aren't you a millionaire? All you need to do is save your money and earn more money and spend a bit less and have some more revenue streams. Why aren't you a millionaire? And you could do it. And that's the same as us turning around to someone and being like, why aren't you 8% body fat? All you need to do is prep your meals, up your NEAT, and be doing some metabolic resistance training 6 times a week. Why aren't you ripped? And it's, well, because their priorities don't align with that. And it's the same for, it's easy on paper, isn't it?
Yeah.
But and I think a lot of there's a big, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a shame, or there's like a taboo around saying, I just can't be bothered. Like, that's the truth with a lot of things for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to say it, so we end up in this excuse matrix. And one of the best things that I ever did in my life, for my own, I guess, for my own mental health, was be comfortable with saying, because I can't be fucked today. I can't be, but that's why. Because otherwise, what happens is someone says, or you think, I've got to do this, and in your head you're like, right, give me 10 reasons why I can't do that. And if you're always looking for those reasons, you'll always find them.
100%.
You go looking for an excuse, you'll find it. And that then becomes the trap. Because all you ever see then is the excuse, like, because your mind, well, then you trained your mind to instantly run to the excuse, to instantly go, but I'm tired, but I've got to pick my daughter up at 4:00. But I'll only have 20 minutes. Like, you get all these buts, and this is so cheesy and it's so simplistic, but the easiest rewire is just to shift from what you haven't got to what you have got. And instead of like, I'm tired and I've got to go pick my daughter up at 4:00, it's like, I'm a little bit tired, but I have got 20 minutes now, so I'm just going to give myself luckily I've only got 20 minutes, so I'm just that's it's a short session. And I think we just get wired into that excuse mainframe. And this isn't some like hardcore message, but I literally mean this because I think it's helpful for people.
And you've been there with the lights going to the car park, by the way, because that would have been quite easy to say to yourself, the excuses are this and that. So you've been presented with that.
Exactly that. So that's what I think. There's I think it's Tim Ferriss who says this thing of like the extreme informs the mean. So if you can take like one extreme end of the spectrum, you'll probably find a lot of solutions for people in the middle. And that was kind of what my like experiment, I guess, the ongoing experiment became in the end. It's like, well, look, if I can do this here, what can you do with, like, you can actually get to the gym a few times a week, or you're at home so you can prep your meals, etc., etc. But I think the biggest, most cathartic thing you can do is just be honest with yourself about when you just can't be bothered, because then you lose the excuses, and don't hang any emotion on that. Don't be like, oh, I'm just, I'm lazy. Just be honest. Just be. And now when I talk about motivation with people, and I think people have this idea that motivation is this internal kind of tactile feeling, that kind of get up and go, where you're like, I'm gonna have the best session today. Like, I'm going to fly through it. And I think people like us in fitness are just wired that way. And that then becomes quite off-putting, I think, because then I think people start to believe, oh yeah, but I'm not wired like that. Whereas as well as I do, we're not wired like that either. There's some days when the session, we're different because we build it into our identities, and it's part of what we do. We've built habits around it. But you and I both know there's days when you're like, oh mate, really, am I going to go through this right now? So when I talk about motivation to people, I'm like, just make a plan and build habits. Don't worry about the feeling. Make a plan that's going to enable you to just start. And for me in the car parks, it was like, I didn't think about working out. I didn't think I'm going outside and I'm going to do 200 push-ups and 300 kettlebell swings and 100 pull-ups. I didn't think about that, because that's then easy to go, oh mate, I don't want to do that. What I just used to think about is the next step. Okay, I've made a coffee. Okay, I'm getting in a cold shower. Okay, kit on. Okay, just walk outside to the van and just drive a little bit farther away from the hotel, because once you're away from that door, you're like, look, I'm here now. I might as well do something. And those little steps, they're easy to conquer. They don't require any like feeling of motivation, because you're just doing one thing. I don't need to be motivated to put my socks on. I just do it. But if I'm thinking I'm putting my socks on to put my trainers on to go outside to do all of this work, I might be put off. So I think make a plan and just take it one step at a time.
And not think too far ahead. Just do that first bit.
And look, if you get out there and you start and you get, give yourself 5 minutes or whatever it is. But if you're 10, 15 minutes in and you're like, I don't want to do this, then don't do it, because all you do, or maybe not all the time, obviously, but don't teach yourself to lose. Don't teach yourself that every session is really hard and really tough, because you'll end up hating it. Give yourself permission to have some enjoyable ones. Give yourself permission to have some where you stop you have to, I think the biggest thing to remember is this whole thing is a choice. We're choosing to do this. And that is such a privilege to even be able to, Jesus Christ, like to have the leisure time. And this is coming from someone who was working like 16 hours a day, and I was staying in like crap hotels. But even then I had to reprogram myself to acknowledge how lucky, like, oh, I'm so lucky that I get to go out into this car park and do this thing. Like, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And there's people that literally people that I'm working with who are in bed right now with like, I don't know, Antiques Roadshow on or whatever, and a pot noodle, miserable.
Yeah.
And I'm privileged that I actually get to have this feeling of wanting to go out and, you know, get a little bit better. But I always just think when you're making plans like that, go through the motions one step at a time, but account for the worst possible version of yourself. Not the worst, but like the laziest version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's what then that first step needs, the first 2 or 3 steps need to be something that you'd be willing to do, even at your absolute laziest. So when I'm kind of putting together a bigger sort of macro plan, if I've got a big goal to work towards, I try and remember, like, on some of these days, you're going to be like, oh, I just want to watch Dragon Ball Z today.
Yeah.
I just want to stay on the couch and just watch cartoons. Think of that guy when you're thinking about what you're going to do.
Yeah, definitely.
How do I get that guy off the couch? Not this guy right now. Not this guy right now who's so keen to do this all.
Yeah,
could do it all today, because he's going to do it whatever. Like, he's going to do it whatever because he's infused. The guy that's like, what's going to get him started? And that's that small process. It's like that guy. He can have a cup of coffee and jump in the shower, in a cold shower, because those things don't take much motivation, but you've got to account for him. And I think one of the biggest possibly mistakes people make that I see is they try and change everything overnight. They try and become the end product.
Yeah.
So they're like, right, I'm going on something you see every year. It's like people like, you see it on Facebook, I'm going on my health kick.
Yeah.
And then overnight, they're trying to transition into some like monk-like bodybuilder. Aren't they? Like, you see it. That's
normally January, funny enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, January the 3rd, or whichever date it is when people go back to work. And you'll see, you know, you'll go on your Facebook and you'll see people, you know, and they're posting, they've got their Tupperware out and they're like, meal prepped. I'm like, I'm all about this life now. And I think, like, you are hurtling towards a wall at 100 miles an hour at the moment. Like, slow down.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, and I do get it, because, and, you know, in some ways we're to blame, because this is the culture we create, but it's because we're already the end product. Yeah. We're trying to scrape out those X percentages at the end. Yeah. Like, I now for Gen Pop, who like just wants to go in the health kick, just make small tweaks, small sustainable tweaks to your lifestyle and build on that. But I guess what most people do is they look at what they want to be. They look at what that person does. Yeah. And they just want to close the gap between where they are now and where they want to be. And they can't see, no, they don't have the privilege of seeing that story retroactively. Like, you and I can look back and go, oh yeah, but I went for a shit patch here, or all I did here was like, you know, I just made sure, you know, I just cut down on the sweets a little bit, or I stopped snacking from petrol stations. It's little things like that. We see those little things. Yeah. Whereas if you've never done anything like this before, you have no background or education in the industry or in fitness, all you see is the stuff, I guess, that people want you to see.
Yeah,
like,
of course. That's the problem,
you see the ultimate, you see the best version. And I go back and forward on this all the time, because I don't post a lot of my food at all. All I tend to post is, you know, if I'm having a pizza, which is like super regularly, but this isn't like a cheat day thing. I'm not that way inclined.
It's just a part of it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I do eat, so I eat way too much pizza, really, probably. But then I get caught up and I'm like, oh, is this fair though? Is this fair that I do this because I can do this because I'm already at, you know, for me, I'm at like my genetic potential. This is as good as I'm ever going to look. I'm here. So undulating up and down from that isn't too big a deal. However, if I got into a position where I was, my body composition wasn't where it was wanting to be, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be eating pizza 5 nights a week.
Yeah,
it might
you know
be
how
like
to
twice.
manage yourself. You're at the point where you know how to manage where you're at. It's just getting other people to get to that point, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. So I'm going to summarize your story and go back. 16-year-old. Obviously, you've done a lot more sort of gym-based workouts in a way, didn't you? There wouldn't have been many compound exercises then, would it? It would have been the fixed bench press and things like that. Am I right in saying?
It was pretty old school, so everything was still there. Was the barbell work was still there, but it was a lot of plate loaded machine work. In terms of my actual training, I mean that's all we did there. And it's so weird when I look back now as like this 16-year-old just starting out training with all these enhanced guys doing these super high volume, high intensity workouts. Like you did not do a set that didn't end in a drop set or end in a negative.
Yes.
I think it did. It's good in a way because it taught me a lot about intensity. Like when you're doing, incline dumbbells and some 20-stone guy is just grabbing your elbows and throwing the dumbbells up and going, one more. And you're like, I'm fucked. I'm going to drop them on my head. That teaches you a lot about intensity. But it wasn't as, I guess now, well, maybe now I'm quite niche, but generally over my whole fitness career, I would be much more, I guess you would say, strength and conditioning inclined, or functional would be the word everyone recognizes, like functionally inclined.
Yes, because obviously it went from that, then it would have went to you losing your mojo, where you said you literally went where you weren't working out, and then that's when you was doing the car park type of workouts. That is when you got creative and got more functional. We use that term. And now you've kind of brought a lot more strength in with the functional stuff, haven't you?
Yeah. I think that might just be a case of kind of kit availability. Obviously, in terms of the strength work, I think one thing that did happen in the midst of that was kind of the rise of CrossFit, which did as much. I've never really identified as a CrossFit per se. I'm literally sitting in a CrossFit box now, and I have done CrossFit competitions, but I think maybe my sights are a bit broader than that. But that coming up, that did open up a lot of other options for people, I think, beyond. And there was even though, so like the box model, the fact that it's called a box and not a gym is that's quite powerful. I think language is quite powerful. And the idea there was that these boxes, as they sprung up once upon a time when Greg Glassman was in charge, that could be your garage, could be your box, or this small industrial unit. It didn't need to be a gym. And I think seeing the rise of that, in the early 2000s and on, kind of made me go like, okay, that CrossFit is kind of, I always say it's the tide on which all ships have risen. So, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation without CrossFit, because I probably wouldn't be where I am, and et cetera, et cetera. And that kind of then makes you look and go, okay, I can actually get some kettlebells and do this, because these guys are doing like kettlebell push presses. And I think I was lucky that I've got a reasonably analytical mind, and I've done a lot of educational stuff with people like Charles Poliquin and stuff like that, where we talk about movement patterns instead of exercises. So that was, that's the biggest thing to me. I say to people is to start looking at it in terms of movement patterns, because then you free yourself up. So the guy in the gym, he's like, I've got 5 sets of 8 military press on my program, but I don't have a barbell. And you're like, well, do some handstand press up. And if you can't, the stimulus isn't always going to be the same, but the movement pattern is the same. And if you can't make that connection in your head, you're a struggle. But once I started making those connections, that made training anywhere I was so easily. And that for me became the fun experiment. I would dig out.
That kind of revolutionized your style of training then. It opened your eyes up a bit, didn't it?
So I would look at, like, going back to Charles Poliquin, I would look at like, okay, I've done German volume training in the past to great effect for me. Can I do this like travel lodge style? Okay, so let's look at the movements. Let's look at, obviously I don't have, GVT is very bodybuilding focused. So obviously I don't have all these machines. I don't have the selection of weights. How can I replicate the movement patterns? Right. Okay. So can't do bench press. I'm going to do weighted dips. I don't have a lat pull down. So I'm going to do ring pull-ups. I'm going to have to do kettlebell goblets, split squats, and things like that. Like, break it down and figure out the way. And this is carried, I think this is actually carried through my entire life. So this for me was an amazing experience. This applies to me outside of fitness, in that it taught me that, start where you are and use what you've got, instead of just, and it goes back to that kind of excuses thing, instead of just going, well, I can't do this because I haven't got this. You just go, well, what have I got, and how will it let me do a version of this?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a good way to get to the close off part of this, because like I said, I actually think we can talk all day, and already I've noted down some subjects we can spring off of this talk. So it's been absolutely fantastic. But for someone who's listened to this, do you want to leave some sort of inspirational quote or some sort of hook for someone who's listening on right now?
Meet people where they are if you're a fitness professional. And if you're just someone looking to get into fitness, meet yourself where you are. And what I mean by that is, don't try and go and become the person you want to become overnight and assume all of their traits and all their identities. And if you're a coach, don't try and make your client become you, essentially. Meet them where they are and find the version of it that works for them. Like I said to you before, every day we're seeing new statistics about the amount of adults in the UK who don't hit basic movement targets. And that's not exercise. That's just movement. Like, that's the stuff that's going to keep you alive. And I think it's our job as people in the fitness industry to maybe let's start demystifying it a bit. And instead of, we all come out onto our platforms, and I know we all want to present the best version of ourselves. And we all want to say, like, hey, I really know what I'm doing, and I've got these ideas and I want you to see them. But temper that with, let's not overcomplicate everything all of the time. And let's make it clear to people that, look, you can just go out for a walk, or you can just, start riding your bike, or you can do, you can do some body weight circuits at home. Start there. Yes, we know what the optimal thing is to be doing. And if you ask, we'll tell you. But optimal, sustainable beats optimal when optimal isn't sustainable. If you go out and you try and do 100% and you do it 0% of the time, it's completely pointless.
That's a great quote to finish with as well. I like that one. I have to note that one down.
Thank you very much. Can you send it to me, please? Because I'll forget.
That's great. I mean, this is going to be on the Power Progress podcast. It's going to be released next Monday. So that'll be on there. And I'm also going to make this a premiere on YouTube on the Wednesday, because I always bring out a different video on the Wednesday on YouTube as well. So, but you know what? It's been amazing to have you, Andrew. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been a great start to my week.
That's brilliant. Well, I'll let you go. I'm sure you're busy, and we'll catch up again.
Catch up soon, dude. Bye.
Bye.